that was the beginning of EOP. When I was there going there, we had at one point 1,400 Chicano students on campus. I don't know what the amount is now, but I think they were the people who inherited the sacrifices of human technology. And I think it's important to understand how the students were the ones who were the flowering of our professional classes and allowed us to be here talking about it. So please, if you can, talk about the Chicano student movement and what they brought to making our place in the Santa Clara Valley. Thank you.
Gracias, Arturo. Gracias a todos los que vinieron. You know how much we appreciate it, how much you're needed here in San Jose. I'm going to expand our boundaries a little bit, like Dr. Jara did, and out of the east side, in the general San Jose. In San Jose City College, we have a library named Professor Chavez. Good for them. And we're standing here in the main library of our branch, of our system, with 25 branch libraries. We couldn't name one for Cesar. I think that's an insult to the raza, and even more deficient for our culture. When our kids see that, they might not express themselves, but they internalize it. And they say, hey, maybe the stuff they say about it is true. If they can't even library for Cesar. What chance do I have? What chance do I have? And I've been passing around these flyers. You guys got one for a couple of years now. Ask people, please put it on the internet. Nothing, you know. I went before city council twice. And my thinking was a word to the wise. Nothing, you know, nothing. And I've gone to the local media. I sat on the sidewalk of Metro for 2 weeks, hoping they'd send someone out to talk to me. Nada. So let's do something together for our city. Speak up, speak up. City council, letters to the editor, your neighbors. I have flyers in English and Spanish. If you want some, please ask me. Here's Cesar Chavez.
¡Que viva!
I just want to say, I'm Cornelio Mata Lopez. I've been here. I was born in 1945, and I used to cut the apricots a lot with my mom and dad and stuff like that. And but I want you to know, in San Jose today, I am an ambassador of the World Cup, and they know about San Jose. Okay? I got to meet the Brazilian team, the Russian team right here in the San Jose airport, and I have a medal from the president. So us Mexicans can do it if you want. I did it through soccer. Okay, I coached White Bee High School, girls, and I had a bad time with the fathers. I did. They didn't want the girls to stay there and play soccer. They wanted to go home and wash the dishes and wash the clothes and stuff like that. I had to argue with them. But I got 4 girls to get scholarships to college with soccer. Like this, but we do what we can. Thank you.
Oh, Warriors.
Thank you. You are all distinguished authors. I've written books. Dr. Pitti, your book of the Silicon Valley is 25 years old. Josie's is a few years old, and Dr. Hada's is new, as is Dr. Villarreal's. I want to ask you all a question. If you could add one more chapter to your book, what would it be about? Each of you. What would it be about?
The Chicano movement in Santa Clara County, in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So I have my dissertation, the book hopefully is forthcoming in a couple years. So I will be adding a few chapters. Well, in 10 years. So I have plenty of time to think about what I'm going to add to it. But the dissertation ends in 1980, and the goal was to bring it closer to the present. So I want to look at what was happening with Proposition 187. How did that impact San Jose? How are Latinos active? How were they impacted by that here in San Jose? And one of the things that I didn't talk about, but I did a lot of research on in my dissertation, is the impact of lowriding with regards to the ways that Latinos claim space and use that as a political tool. So one of the things that I looked at in the dissertation was the Fiestas Patrias as, right, a way of Latinos claiming space and then using that as a political tool. If we move further into the newer generations, how that claiming of space was also utilized, but not through cultural celebrations like the Fiestas Patrias, but through a new culture, through a Chicano culture of lowriding. So that's something that I'm going to be adding.
Thank you, Stephen.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think I wish that I had more to say about policing. I knew a lot about policing and critiques of policing that didn't actually make it into the book, and I wish that I could go back and do that. And then if I actually could write more, I would love to write about the kind of youth culture in the 21st century and the content continuities and discontinuities into the present as youth have done new things, some of which I think is a continuation of what would happen in the past, and in other ways, there's a lot of energy and developments that strike me as very new in the 21st century.
Right. Thank you.
Excuse me. My name is Jose Mendoza, and I came from Mexico in February 14, 1962. I started working for the first year washing cars. Next, I went to work for a Western wear store, which was my thing in Mexico. My grandfather and father had stores, and finally, 13 years later, I opened my own store, which the name was San José Menswear. And the point I'm getting, most of us came with little education, that we educate our children to have gone to university, and we were, like I said, no education. I had a friend who was also a customer. His 3 sons, he and his wife sent them to good, nice schools, and then finally went to Stanford and become a doctoral degrees, 3 of them. Wow. Which was excellent for me to have a friend like him with little education or like mine, and have produced good citizens, and they're all professors at the University of Syracuse, California. Yes. Also, I have another friend who has a couple of his sons with doctor's degrees. One is teaching, if I'm not mistaken, his father, which is my friend Victor Sanchez. His English is better than mine, but not excellent. But his son is teaching English. Guess who? Guess where? He's teaching English in England. Oh yeah. Which is terrific. Also, Martians here, Mexican Martians especially, we were little, like the Flores family, who had 3 grocery stores, small ones. They educate their children all the way to universities, and this is a little short story because we have so many people who came around my time, which older kids are educated. This is how we came. This is what we can do if we can come and work hard working, because doesn't come easy. It's very hard. As some people now I hear that they saw our work when they were trying to kick us out of the Tropicana Shopping Center. It was the third time they were working on me, thinking they kicked me out from downtown. They kicked me out from downtown Salinas. So I was very mad with the city and San Jose Redevelopment Agency. I took over the flag to defend the Tropicana Shopping Center, and we were able to defeat the city because we had the people of San Jose and actually the Northern California give us their support, and that's why we were able to defeat the San Jose Redevelopment Agency.
Historians, there's the story to be collected.
Hi guys, this is for all three of you. I was wondering if any of you ever thought or considered of what do you think the value or the impact of Danza Azteca or any other native movements in the Chicano culture of East San Jose, especially since we now have our Mexican New Year is the first place that was ever celebrated in the United States here, and as that culture was introduced to Chicanos back in the 70s, within the Chicano movement. How do you see the impact of that up to now, maybe in the future? Have you noticed that?
When the possibility opened up for me to consider or to speak up about doing something with danza, it was Mr. Segura came from Mexico to recruit people. And I was too strong a woman, and women were not encouraged to participate. So that was the extent of my involvement. In San Antonio, it's been a different story. There are groups of women who are danzantes, mexica danzantes, and that has had more of an access for me. So that was the extent of my connection, other than going to see presentations or to see them do bendiciones at different events when they came to open up spaces.
I think with Danza Azteca, I know I haven't had too much involvement with it, but it's something that I'm interested in. When I currently was hired at Loyola Marymount University down in Los Angeles, but prior to that I was teaching at Santa Clara University. I was teaching Latin American history. And I know I reached out to a few organizations to try and have Danza Azteca come to the university to have a performance, but there was a miscommunication, so I was never able to connect with anyone to have that come to fruition. With regards, I think it's important to note that, right, kind of as you mentioned, that it was the late 1960s, 1970s, where you have Chicanos trying to reclaim their identity and reconnect with our roots back in Mexico, and part of those roots are indigenous. Half of our racial makeup is indigenous, right? At least, right, when we look at kind of Spanish conquest with the conquistadores, with the indigenous peoples, native peoples of the Americas. And so I think it's important that we make more of an effort to put that at the forefront, and to put that at the forefront of what Chicano, Mexican American, Latino identity is, because I think there's an emphasis on, right, who we are as people today, but sometimes we forget that even who we are today has roots in indigenous past here in the Americas.
Stephen, did you want to address the question?
I think those answers were excellent. I don't have much more to say. I mean, I think this, I'll just re-say that, this reminds me that the ways that people understand Mexican culture and what they value in Mexican culture, and what Mexican culture means, has changed over time. So Danza Azteca is incredibly important, and it has been for decades. I think probably its meaning has changed from the early 70s to today. And as Josie was saying, it's also different organizations have different approaches in different places. That would not have been an expression of Mexican nationalism or Mexican identity that would have resonated here or anywhere in the 1940s. So it's particular to a particular period. The second thing I would say, but very, very important to understand and to reckon with, think about. The second thing I would say is when I was starting to do this work on the project, I didn't probably pay as much attention to danza as I should have. I think what I also didn't know how to deal with in my own work as at the time, and maybe still, was how to think about indigenous migrations into California, which, as I'm sure everybody knows, has become increasingly important since roughly the 1980s. So when we think about the kind of connection between indigeneity and Mexican/Latino cultural identities, that's really shifted over time, over the course of decades in the United States as the demographics have shifted, and how then we understand danza azteca in the context of expressions of in places where there's also expressions of Zapotec identity, for example, transnational identity, is just something else I think it's important to talk about.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to add one quick thing too, that I think it's also important to keep in mind that with danza azteca, it's a way of somewhat sensationalizing, right, this particular indigenous group, this particular indigenous history that's tied to Mexico. But that also kind of ignores the existence of other indigenous cultures that are very much living today. And I think with regards to the ways in which it's being maybe more recognized, might also have to do with an influx of indigenous people coming to the United States today, like people from southern Mexico, from like Oaxaca, just recognizing that there's more of an indigenous migration of people from Mexico to the United States today. So it's just something to keep in mind.
For me, I identified a little bit more with the Matachines dances because on my mother's side, all my uncles dance Matachines, and so I think I associated that with the indigenous dances when we went to powwows, and I found more identification with that because it spoke to my experience in my immediate family.
Thank you. I think we have time for just one more question.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just one more question.
So Jose, my father grew up in Mayfair. He went to Mayfair Elementary School, Pala, and wrestled and became state champion for James Lick. He was part of the first Mayfair Assembly. He was chairman of MAFA, CSO, the GI Forum, and many other organizations. My father's Al Garza, the first Mexican city councilman here. Now, the issue I want to ask everybody and just to think about is, look, the Mercury News attacked my father badly. There were accusations there that were not true. Our house burned down the day that we were going to get a loan for attorney Ron Reese to defend my father against the Mercury News. And of course, that Bank of America pulled their loan back, and we ended up having to do something that's been really negative for my father. Now, my question is, or my suggestion is, maybe you can do something that would investigate how many Latinos have been crucified in the media. So I myself, when I ran for city council, the councilwoman said that my 85-year-old mother was out there, and the Mercury News printed it. So I run a great campaign, nothing negative, no photos. But the Mercury News persecuted me. But you know what? They started with my father because citywide he ran unopposed, and the other city council members could not handle it. So hopefully something can be put in print about media and the negative effects they have on people who are individuals in the community. Thank you.
I agree with you that the Mercury News has not always been, or maybe has never been, our friend. For example, they instigated fights between Latinas who were running for office.
Correct.
Anita Duarte and Blanca Alvarado,
Right?
or Ernestina Garcia and Sofia Mendoza. They figured out ways to tease out contradictions that were fabricated to sell newspapers and to put people against each other. I know your dad. You know, his story is a sad story. He's from Del Rio, right?
El
Originally?
Paso.
El Paso.
My
okay.
father-in-law from Del Rio.
Okay, sorry. There's so many Texans here, I forget where they're from. So again, I think that that story needs to be told. And the only way that the story can be told is if somebody collects an oral history by your dad. And I think this is, what I want to say is this is where the, it's not a fault. The misstep of the academy is when we go identify communities we want to study, and we have to figure out the way to identify the individuals we should interview. Your Al Garza never surfaced as a leader in the pre-interviews I did for my dissertation, okay, which is where my book comes from. Ron Gonzalez came up in the group, but he refused to participate. So again, it's one of those things where somebody needs to collect his oral history, and I think we need to have it reflect the record. Thank you for your story.
Yeah, my name is Sharat Lin. I want to just thank you for this amazing panel. I really learned a lot. But it touches me in many ways. So the first is that I've organized some labor tours of for example, the Almaden Quicksilver mine. And of course, if you go to the park, it's all about mining and about mercury. But you know, behind that is the workers, the labor that made the mining possible. You had the English camp and you had the Spanish camp, and that's whitewashed. Because they just spoke different languages. But no, you know, the fact is that the English miners didn't want to live with the people from Latin America.
Right.
That's what it was.
Right.
But it's very hard to uncover the truth, to get the stories behind that. Second thing is, you know, we're celebrating today the victory that is allowing the cruising in San Jose. Up until 2010, the San Jose Police Department had these random checkpoints on Santa Clara Street. And the fall of 2010, we had a new police chief, Chris Moore. I went to him, handed him two reports, published report, news reports that I had published about the checkpoints. And I handed them to Chris Moore, and I said, "Are you aware of this problem?" And he said, "No, but I'll look into it." The next year, 2011, the checkpoints vanished. Okay, so this is a backstory, but you know, it is something that paved the way for the victory that we have today. Okay. Third thing I don't want you to forget is the biggest political event you could say it came from the East Side, right? The biggest political event in San Jose's history was the El Gigante, right? The 2006 march. More than 250,000 people, the biggest march probably in the whole of Northern California, was here in San Jose on May 1st. Okay? And then finally, current struggles, we have the Fallon statue. Let's not forget that. Okay, thank you so much.
I believe we have just one more question.
I'll be really quick. My name is Elizabeth. I'm half Black, half Latina, and I really resonate with what you were saying. I'm not from San Jose, I'm originally from Oakland, but I can relate. When I came here as a student to get my sociology degree, I really connected with being in San Jose. I live in Santa Clara Street, went to La Polka, and now I'm doing organizing work on the east side in the Castell neighborhood, and a lot of what that's about is the lead that's coming from the airplanes there. And so I want to uplift the Castell United in terms of the senoritas, senoras, the organizers there who have been for decades demanding the closure of Reed Hillview because it is toxic and it's hurting our community in so many different ways. And so I just want to say that the not being taken advantage of, that fight, that's something that I resonate with my Latino, Latinx community. So I think that's another thing for any historians in the room to research how Castell became Castell and what's happening now. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and encourage everybody to write a letter to Lofgren and the City Council to support the library. A library be named for, I'm gonna write and I'm gonna send a letter. Okay, so I want to encourage you and give me your name again? Yeah, you. No.
Oh, me, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, you're not half and half, you're 100% both cultures.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget, that's how we are devalued. You're 100% Black or African American, and you're 100% whatever your ethnicity is, because Latina is another pan-ethnic term. Don't forget, that's how we get reduced to fragments. Thank you.